Clara Simmons, 27 years old, stood at the edge of a backyard crowded with family friends, listening to her father lift a glass and say, "Stop looking for attention." His voice carried across 40 guests as he smiled beside her older sister, Maya. That week, Clara had graduated top of her class, yet none of the celebration was for her. The banner, the catered food, the cheers. Everything honored Maya's acceptance into medical training. Clara held her folded valedictorian letter in one hand, wondering how pride could hurt so deeply. She walked back inside whispering, "They don't even see me." She sat alone in her car for a long moment, the graduation gown still lying across the back seat. Clara had grown up in a neat 4-bedroom house on Oak Ridge Lane, just outside Milwaukee. Her father, Henry, ran a regional insurance office with a firm handshake and perfect shirts. Her mother, Linda, kept the home spotless and the church women's group even cleaner. Maya, the bright and outgoing daughter, filled every room with charm. Clara, the quiet one, worked at the local library and collected straight A's. She always believed that being good would eventually be enough. Clara remembered the day she was 14, proudly placing her honor roll certificate on the refrigerator beside Maya's volleyball photo. The next morning her certificate had vanished, tucked under a pile of coupons. When she asked Linda, her mother barely glanced up from her mug. "The fridge was getting cluttered, sweetheart." Maya's picture stayed. Clara swallowed disappointment even then, telling herself it didn't matter. But now, standing in a backyard full of people cheering only for her sister, she realized that the scoreboard of her childhood wasn't just unfair. It had never been meant for her to win. That same evening, Clara walked to her mother holding the valedictorian letter. "Mom, I have news too. I'm giving the graduation speech." Linda smiled politely as she poured champagne. "That's nice, honey. Make sure your teachers help you." Clara tried louder. "I graduated this week too." A few guests turned. Maya glanced over, uncomfortable. Then Henry's voice sliced through the air. "Clara, stop looking for attention. This night is about your sister." The yard fell silent. No one defended her. Clara walked through the kitchen, out the front door, and sat alone in her car, tears quiet but certain. On graduation day, Clara stood backstage, smoothing her gown with steady hands. 700 people filled the auditorium, families cheering and taking pictures. The 4 seats she had reserved for her parents and sister remained empty. When her name was called, she stepped to the podium and delivered a speech about working hard even when no one notices. The applause rose like thunder, but her eyes caught only one figure standing, Mrs. Rowan, her silver-haired English teacher. After the ceremony, the woman pressed a small card into Clara's hand. "Your parents can't see you," she said. "But I do." Clara kept Mrs. Rowan's card tucked inside her wallet as she packed 2 suitcases and left for Minneapolis later that summer. She didn't tell her parents she was leaving. She didn't think they would notice. She found a tiny shared apartment near the university and worked part-time filing documents at a finance office. Some nights she ate noodles for dinner and studied until sunrise. Still, that small space felt like freedom, something she had never owned before. When she received the acceptance email for a scholarship Mrs. Rowan had suggested, she whispered, "Someone believed in me. That's enough." 2 years into college, Clara applied for her first solo apartment. She felt proud handing over her pay stubs, imagining a quiet place with her own door. But 3 days later the property manager called. "Your credit report has irregularities," he said gently. "I recommend checking it." Clara frowned. She had no loans, no cards, nothing that should cause trouble. She told herself it must be a mistake. Overwhelmed with school, she let it go and took a cheaper place with no credit check required. She didn't know then that ignoring that call would haunt her years later. Clara graduated with honors and accepted a junior analyst job at a financial firm downtown. She worked hard, stayed late, and impressed her boss, Margaret Lewis, a sharp woman with reading glasses on a chain. "You have a gift for patterns," Margaret told her one afternoon. "Use it." Clara nodded, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Confidence growing quietly, like a seed finally getting sunlight. But every holiday she sat alone in her small apartment, wondering whether anyone back in Milwaukee even remembered she existed. The bruise from her past didn't vanish. It only learned to rest quietly. For almost a decade, Clara didn't speak to her sister. When she thought of Maya, she remembered the night of the backyard party, the uncomfortable laugh, the silence that followed Henry's cruel words. Then one winter night while Clara reviewed a quarterly report on her couch, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Something made her answer. A thin, shaking voice broke through. "Clara, it's Maya. Please don't hang up." Clara froze. She hadn't heard her sister's voice in years, but this voice sounded cracked, exhausted, nothing like the bright girl she once knew. "Where are you?" Clara asked. "Bus station. Rochester," Maya whispered. "I have nowhere to stay." Clara grabbed her coat, heart racing. "Why aren't you at Mom and Dad's?" A long silence followed. "They kicked me out," Maya said softly. She explained in broken pieces. Her medical license suspended after a mistake, her job gone, her savings gone. Henry told her she had embarrassed the family and needed to leave. Linda had stood behind him crying but said nothing. Clara drove into the snowstorm, listening as Maya finally admitted, "The moment I wasn't useful anymore. They treated me like you." Clara gripped the steering wheel tightly as Maya continued speaking in fragments. "There's more," Maya whispered. "It's about money, and us." Clara's breath caught. Maya explained that on her final night in their parents' home, she searched Henry's office for her birth certificate. Instead, she found a hidden folder filled with printed emails. Messages between Henry and Linda going back more than 10 years. "Clara," Maya said, voice trembling, "the emails were about keeping us apart. Each holiday, each birthday, each missed call had been carefully arranged. They told me you didn't care," Maya whispered, "and told you the same about me." The snowstorm thickened as Clara merged onto the highway. "What else was in the folder?" she asked quietly. Maya hesitated. "Credit card applications," she finally said. "5 of them. 3 in your name. 2 in mine." Clara's grip tightened. She had never opened a credit card. Maya explained that the cards had been used for tuition payments, house repairs, and even the big party thrown for her acceptance to medical training. "They forged our names," Maya said. "Every signature. Every document." Clara felt cold air rush through her chest. "That's why your apartment application was rejected," Maya added. "Your credit wasn't bad. It was stolen." Clara pulled into the bus station parking lot and saw Maya sitting alone under the fluorescent lights, holding a small suitcase far too light for someone whose whole life had fallen apart. Maya looked thinner, her posture slumped, her confidence gone. When their eyes met, neither sister moved. 10 silent years sat between them like a wall. Clara finally stepped out into the snow. "Come on," she said gently. "Let's go." Maya stood, voice cracking. "Clara, I'm sorry about that night at the party." Clara opened her car door but didn't respond. The apology wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was a start. Back at Clara's apartment, the two sisters sat at the kitchen table as Clara opened her laptop. She pulled her complete credit report, and within minutes, 3 fraudulent accounts appeared. Each tied to Henry and Linda's address. Total balance, $64,000. Maya ran her own report. 2 accounts, $45,000. "They used our names to build their life," Clara whispered. Maya nodded slowly. "They used me as long as I made them look good, and used you without even pretending to love you." Clara closed the laptop and took a long breath. "We're calling a lawyer tomorrow." The next morning, Clara contacted a colleague's recommended attorney, James Walton, a specialist in identity theft cases. She explained everything: the forged documents, the hidden emails, the stolen accounts. After a long pause, James said, "This is federal fraud. Each application is a separate offense." Clara glanced at Maya, who sat gripping a mug with both hands. James continued, "If you want the debts cleared, you'll need to file an FTC affidavit and a police report. That means naming your parents." Maya's face paled. Clara felt her stomach twist. But she answered firmly, "We will. We're done carrying their lies." 2 days later, Maya called Clara at work, her voice tight with panic. "Dad just called," she whispered. Clara stepped into a hallway, heart pounding. "What did he say?" Maya swallowed. "He wants me to come home," said. "Mom is sick." Clara frowned. "Sick how?" Maya exhaled sharply. "It's the same old acid reflux she's had forever." "He's lying." Maya explained that Henry warned her not to contact Clara, insisting Clara was jealous and manipulative. Clara closed her eyes. The same script repeated for years. "There's more," Maya added. "He said he'd call the police and claim I stole from the house." Clara felt heat rise in her chest. "Stole what?" she asked. Maya's voice dropped. "The folder. The documents. The proof." Clara paced slowly. Henry wasn't worried about missing items. He was worried about evidence. "Don't call him back," Clara said. "Don't respond at all. Let James handle everything." Maya agreed, though her voice shook. After the call, Clara stared at her lunch untouched. It became painfully clear. Their parents weren't trying to protect the family. They were trying to protect themselves. Clara whispered, "They're scared." "They should be." The next day, Linda called Clara with a trembling voice. "Honey," she said, "I don't understand why you and your sister are turning against us." Clara kept her voice steady. "Mom, did you open any credit cards in my name?" Silence hit the line like a stone. Then Linda answered with cries, accusations, and hurt feelings. But never once with the word no. She called Clara ungrateful, dramatic, selfish. She pleaded, then scolded, then cried again. Clara stayed silent until Linda finished. "I'm done, Mom," she finally said. "I'm done pretending." Linda's breath hitched and then she hung up. That evening Clara called James. "My mother didn't deny anything," she said. He replied calmly, "Then you have what you need. We file." 2 weeks later, as news quietly traveled through their parents' church community, cracks began forming in the image Henry and Linda had carefully built for decades. One honest voice, Mrs. Rowan, shared only the truth when asked. Soon people who once believed Clara was jealous began reconsidering. Clara's aunt Patricia called unexpectedly. "I overheard Henry once," she confessed. "He told Linda, 'Open another one.' Clara never checks." "I didn't understand then, but I do now." Meanwhile, in their church the reaction shifted. Couples who once greeted Henry and Linda warmly now kept a polite distance. The pastor preached gently about truth and accountability. After service, 3 longtime family friends approached Henry. "Is it true?" one asked. Henry stiffened. "My family's business is private." But it wasn't a denial. Linda tugged his arm, tears falling, whether real or rehearsed. The illusion they had maintained for years had begun to crack, and for the first time Henry seemed unable to stop it. Clara wasn't present to witness it. But she didn't need to be. Truth travels quietly, but it travels far. That evening Clara's phone rang again. This time showing Henry's name. She let it buzz twice before answering. His voice was smaller than she remembered, shaky in a way that surprised her. "Clara, you're destroying this family," he said. "Withdraw the complaint." Clara leaned against her counter. "You opened accounts in my name when I was 18, she replied. "You forged my signature." Henry exhaled sharply. "I had no choice. The money went to the house, to Maya's schooling. It was for all of us." Clara's voice stayed calm. "No, Dad. It was for your image of us." Henry's breathing grew heavier. "I'll pay it back. Every cent. Just pull the report." Clara shook her head slowly. "You don't understand. It's not just debt. It's identity theft." Henry's voice cracked. "Do you want me to go to prison? Is that it?" Clara closed her eyes. "I don't want anything from you. I want my name back." Silence stretched. Then Henry whispered, "Please, Clara. I'm sorry. Don't let them take everything." Clara swallowed. "You took everything years ago. I'm just taking myself back." She ended the call, her hands steady even as her heart reeled. The weeks that followed were strangely quiet. Clara went to work, cooked dinner, reviewed documents, and let the legal process unfold without reacting. Updates came from James. The FTC affidavit processed, the Milwaukee police opening an investigation, the credit bureaus freezing the fraudulent accounts. Clara told no one at work. She didn't want pity or attention. Only truth. Then one afternoon Margaret Lewis called her into her office. "Clara," she said, "I'm nominating you for the Regional Analyst Award. Your work is exceptional." Clara blinked, stunned. Margaret added, "This isn't charity. It's earned. You show up every day." Clara walked out of Margaret's office and leaned against the hallway wall, breathing deeply. 10 years ago she had cried in a car because her father accused her of looking for attention. Now she was being recognized for her talent not because she asked but because she delivered. For the first time she understood that success built quietly was still success. She didn't need applause from people who never saw her. She needed applause from herself. She whispered, "I'm proud of me," and kept walking, letting the old wound loosen its grip. A few days later, someone knocked on Claire's apartment door early on a Saturday morning. When she opened it, Linda stood there with puffy eyes and a wrinkled coat, looking nothing like the polished mother Clara remembered. "Please, Clara," she said, "we need to talk." Clara didn't move aside. Linda stepped halfway into the doorway. "Your father could go to prison," she said. "Do you understand what that means?" Clara held her gaze. "Use my name. You signed those papers." Linda shook her head desperately. "I didn't have a choice. Your father made me." From behind Clara, Maya's voice cut through sharply. "No, Mom. We read the emails." Linda froze when she heard Maya's voice behind Clara. She hadn't known her older daughter was living there. Maya stepped forward, arms crossed. "You weren't forced, Mom. Every email showed you agreed. You wrote, 'Clara never checks. Open another one.'" Linda's face collapsed. "Maya, sweetheart, you don't understand." Maya shook her head. "We do understand. You used us." Linda pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, eyes darting between both daughters. Clara spoke quietly, "You have two choices. Cooperate with the lawyer and tell the truth, or wait until investigators come to your door." Linda lowered her head and walked away. 3 weeks later, James called Clara. "Your parents hired legal counsel," he said. "They want to negotiate." Clara sat up straighter. "What are they offering?" James explained their proposal. Full acknowledgement of the fraud, complete repayment of the balances. Now adjusted to $110,000. And a request for a plea agreement with supervised probation instead of prison. "This restores your credit entirely," he said. "No criminal record for you or Maya. The law recognizes your innocence." Clara exhaled slowly. She didn't want revenge. She wanted freedom. "We accept," she said. Maya nodded silently beside her. A month later, Henry and Linda stood in a small Milwaukee courtroom with their attorneys. No audience, no dramatic whispers, only a quiet judge and the weight of their own decisions. They pled guilty to identity theft and signed a financial restraining order preventing them from ever accessing their daughter's information again. Clara wasn't there to watch. She didn't need to be. James called afterward. "It's done," he said. "Your names are clear." Clara closed her eyes and let a long breath escape her chest. For the first time in her life she felt something unfamiliar. Lightness. Weeks passed and Clara's credit score rose sharply as the fraudulent accounts were removed. She updated her records, applied for better accounts, and watched everything align into a life that finally belonged to her. One evening she called the property manager who had rejected her years earlier. "Just wanted you to know," she said gently, "the reason my application failed back then was identity theft. My record is corrected now." The woman apologized. Clara smiled softly. "It's all right. I know who was at fault." She hung up feeling unexpectedly peaceful. Some closures don't require an audience. Meanwhile, in their old church community, the truth settled quietly but permanently. The front row seats Henry and Linda once claimed remained empty for weeks before other families filled them. Friends who once praised them now stepped aside politely, unsure how to speak to people who had caused so much harm. Clara's Aunt Patricia called often, sharing small updates but never gloating. "They're moving out of the old house," she told Clara one evening. "Using the equity for the repayment plan. They keep to themselves now." Clara stared at her window watching spring arrive. "Thank you," she whispered. Maya lived with Clara for 3 months while rebuilding her life. Their relationship felt fragile at first. Two women carrying years of misunderstanding. But conversations slowly opened. One night over pasta, Clara finally asked, "Why didn't you defend me at that party?" Maya set her fork down. "Because I believed them," she admitted. "They told me for years that you hated me, that you were jealous. I didn't realize I'd been manipulated too." Clara nodded, feeling anger and empathy twist together. "You don't have to fix the past," she said. "Just be honest now." Maya reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Maya found work at a community health clinic, using her medical knowledge in a way that didn't require a license. For the first time I'm doing something because I want to, she told Clara, lacing her shoes for a morning shift. By May, she moved into her own nearby apartment. Their weekly dinners became a new tradition. Sometimes homemade meals, sometimes takeout, always honest. Healing wasn't perfect. Some days brought arguments, others brought laughter. But it was real. Clara realized that rebuilding with Maya wasn't about becoming the sisters they once were. It was about becoming the women they could be. At the Analyst Awards ceremony downtown, Clara sat in a ballroom filled with 200 professionals. She didn't expect anyone to come. But when she glanced at row 3, she saw Maya. And beside her, Mrs. Rowan, wearing her classic gray blazer and reading glasses on a chain. Clara's name was announced and applause rose through the room. She walked to the podium, remembering the girl who once stood on a stage while 4 chairs sat empty. Her voice was steady. 10 years ago someone told me I was looking for attention. Tonight I'm standing here because I earned it. 6 months later, a handwritten letter arrived. Henry's uneven script across the envelope. Clara opened it slowly. He wrote about childhood poverty, mistakes, shame, and fear. He didn't justify the fraud, he didn't deny the harm. He ended with, "I know I was wrong. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know. I see you now." Clara folded the letter and placed it in her nightstand. She didn't write back. She didn't hate him. She simply no longer needed anything from him. She sat by her window watching soft evening light touch the trees and whispered, "I see myself now. That's enough."